Good morning, everyone. The time is 10 a.m. Thank you for joining us for the monthly meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board. I will ask for your patience as we get everyone in place to start the meeting. I will call the meeting in a few more minutes. So we'll ask Mr. Purdon and Mr. Gary when we are ready. Mr. Purdon, Mr. Gary, are we ready to start the meeting?
I believe we are all here and ready.
Okay. I will now call the meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board to order. This is due to the COVID-19 outbreak, as we're conducting the monthly board meeting today by video teleconference. The first thing on the agenda is the public hearing. We have two hearings this morning, one for the enforcement board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric, which the board will require your vote. The other hearing does not require a vote from the board. Instructions on making and ignoring statements by video teleconference have been distributed to you. Statements should be concise. All statements will become part of the hearing record. There is one certification and one enforcement board agreement to be reviewed today. Would now please send the certification letter to EPA that regulations 2.04 construction or mitigation of resources in or impacting upon non-attainment areas versus version 7 satisfy the requirements for a non-attainment new source review program for the 2015 8-hour National Ambient Air Quality Standard for the Louisville Ozone Attainment Area. Mr. Gary.
Thank you, Chairman Elton, board members. Sorry, that's a mouthful for the title of a public hearing. The Air Pollution Control District of Louisville is requesting that a letter certifying that Regulation 2.04, construction or modification of major sources in or impacting upon non-attainment areas, emission offset requirements, version 7, satisfies the requirements for a non-attainment new source review program for the 2015 8-hour ozone NACs for the Louisville ozone non-attainment area. Specifically, the district is certifying that the existing approved Jefferson County portion of the Kentucky State Implementation Plan satisfies the requirements of Section 182 of the Clean Air Act, non-attainment new source review for a non-attainment new source review program for the 2015 8-hour ozone NACs provisions applicable to the Louisville ozone non-attainment area. And the district is requesting that this certification be submitted to EPA by the Commonwealth of Kentucky Division for Air Quality for approval as a revision to the Kentucky State Implementation Plan. On April 30th, 2018, EPA designated Jefferson County, Kentucky as marginal non-attainment for the 2015 8-hour ozone NACs. Pursuant to Section 182 of the Clean Air Act, non-attainment areas must have non-attainment new source review programs. In EPA's December 6, 2018 final rule for the implementation of 2015 National Ambient Air Quality Standards for ozone non-attainment area state implementation plan requirements, air agencies were advised to review their current regulations that address non-attainment area planning requirements for prior ozone NACs. If these regulations meet the non-attainment area planning requirements, a certified written statement can replace revised regulations. Due to previous non-attainment ozone designations, the district has existing non-attainment new source review program at Regulation 2.04. The district's provisions for the non-attainment new source review program were reviewed and approved by EPA previously. The district continues to operate under the provisions approved by EPA, and therefore no further action is necessary to satisfy the NNSR requirements for the Louisville ozone non-attainment area. Therefore, the district is submitting this certification that the current program is sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gurley, has any member of the public registered to make a statement regarding this matter?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Has any member of the public submitted a written statement regarding this?
We received one comment from EPA suggesting that we broaden some of the language in the draft certification letter, specifically the paragraph 2 of the draft letter states that the non-attainment new source review satisfies section 182A2C of the Clean Air Act, which pertains to marginal non-attainment areas. They suggested we also include section 182B of the Clean Air Act, which covers moderate non-attainment areas due to our likely reclassification that we have discussed before at the end of this ozone season if we fail to make attainment. They believe that our program does satisfy those moderate attainment area requirements already as well. They just suggested we go ahead and certify for that possible reclassification.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other statements from the public? If so, please raise your hand by teleconference and you will be called upon. This is a feature you can find on your phone by pressing *3 and you will be called upon. Have we had any response, Mr. Purdon?
No, Chairman Hilton. I do not see any raised hands in the list.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is there any questions or comments from the board members regarding this? None? Thank you. Would the staff please present the enforcement board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric Company? Mr. Goretti.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. The district brings for the board's consideration an enforceable board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric, which operates the Mill Creek Electric Generating Station, a coal-fired power plant located at 14,660 Dixie Highway. On April 30th, 2018, US EPA designated Louisville Metropolitan Statistical Area as marginal non-attainment for the 2015 8-hour ozone national ambient air quality standard of 70 parts per billion. Ground level ozone is not emitted directly into the air, but is created by chemical reactions between oxides of nitrogen and volatile organic compounds. Mill Creek is the single largest source of NOx emissions in the Louisville Metropolitan Statistical Area, with emissions of more than 6,920 tons in 2019. District Regulation 3.01, Ambient Air Quality Standards, prohibits the emission of any air contaminant at levels or in such a way that would interfere with the maintenance of an ambient air quality standard. As a marginal non-attainment area, it's important to reduce ozone formation and return to compliance. If the area does not attain the standard, the EPA may designate us as moderate non-attainment. If that happens, companies may be required to reduce emissions by implementing reasonable, achievable control technologies and control measures, and implement other regulatory measures required to comply with the more serious moderate non-attainment designation. In the past, Mill Creek's permitted and allowable NOx emissions were sometimes as high as 18 to 25 tons per day when the area experienced an ozone exceedance. Based on an evaluation by the district, NOx emissions from Mill Creek above 15 tons per day were identified as one of the drivers of high ozone formation. For the second year in a row, LG&E has agreed to take measures to reduce its emissions of NOx at Mill Creek to be equal or less than 15 tons per calendar day for the ozone season, consistent with the objectives of District Regulation 3.1 and the voluntary goals of the multi-pollutant stakeholder process. The agreement includes necessary record-keeping, reporting, and monitoring components consistent with the 15 tons per calendar day limit. The district recommends the board adopt the agreement as proposed.
Okay. Mr. Gurr, has any member of the public registered to make a statement this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Has any member of the public submitted a written statement?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Are there any other statements from the public? If so, please raise your hand by teleconference and you will be called upon. This is a feature that you can hit *3 on your phone. Mr. Purdon, if you notice anyone would like to make a statement?
No, Chairman Hilton, I don't see any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Gurry, does everyone else wish to speak?
I don't see any raised hands either.
Okay. Would a representative of Louisville Gas and Electric like to make a statement?
If somebody from LG&E is present and would like to make a statement, you can raise your hand using the same instructions that Chairman Hilton just provided for the public. I'm not seeing any raised hands, Chairman Hilton.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? I have one question. Since they are, I guess NOx is the only pollutant that has an effect on ozone. What about SO2? Does that contribute to the ozone at all? SO2?
SO2 is not one of the things that's the drivers of ground level ozone.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there have been no further comments or questions. This public hearing is adjourned. Now I will call the regular meeting of the Louisville Metro Light Pollution Control Board to order. First, I'd like to see if we have a quorum. I will make a roll call of all the board members that are present on this teleconference. When I call your name, please say here. Steve Sullivan. I think he's absent. Dr. Colbert. I think I saw him, yep.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Dr. May. Let's see here. Candace White.
Here.
Thank you. Heather Allen.
Here.
Thank you. And Keith Joy.
Here.
Thank you, Keith. Mrs. Hampton, do we have any introductions this morning?
No, Chairman Hoffman.
Are there any public recognitions this morning?
No, sir.
No, okay. We down to approval of minutes. All of the board members receive the submitted minutes of the April meeting. The minutes of the regular meeting held on April 21st were distributed electronically for your review. Are there any changes to the minutes by board members, comments, or upgrades to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved. Public comment. Mr. Gurry, has anyone registered to make a comment this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Has anyone provided a written statement this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this teleconference? If not, does anyone else wish to speak?
I'm not seeing any raised hands, Chairman Hilton.
Thank you. That completes the public comment for this hearing. Unfinished business. There is no unfinished business. New business. The enforcement board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric. The district has recommended that the board adopt the enforceable board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric Company. Is there a motion to adopt the enforceable board agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric? Can I get a second? Pardon? Who was that? Get a second for that? A motion?
I'll second that, Dr. May.
Thank you. Dr. May, thank you. Or is there any discussions from any of the board members? If not, I will take a roll call vote. Please unmute your mic and say yes if you wish to adopt the proposed agreement with Louisville Gas and Electric. Steve Sullivan, he's absent. Dr. Colbert?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Dr. May?
Yes.
Thank you. Candace White?
Yes.
Thank you. And Heather Allen?
Yes.
And Keith Joy?
Yes.
Thank you. The agreement is adopted. Thank you, board members. Committee reports, we have no committees that met in the past month. Staff report, Mrs. Hamilton. Could we get the staff report from you this morning?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Hilton. And good morning, everyone. I am very pleased to let you know that the district is in the process of planning its new normal return to the Edison Center.
Good.
We're
Thank you.
very glad to see that happening for us all. For the next few weeks, the district will be transitioning staff back from telework at home with the goal of fully returning to the office later this summer. Just like the district, the board has also shown that it can do its work virtually. The district plans to continue offering video teleconferencing as an option for attending future board meetings, even when we're able to again meet in person. At the present time, the July 21st board meeting looks like our earliest opportunity for an in-person meeting, provided we can do so safely and appropriately socially distanced and comply with the necessary guidance from the Office of the Kentucky Attorney General. So, look for an update at the meeting about how and where we'll meet in July. I know there are lots of questions about returning to the Edison Center full time, and we are seeking answers. But I want to again express my thanks to the board, the public, and the district staff for your patience over the past year. Gonna need a little bit more of it as we go through this next phase, but I know we can count on each other, and I deeply appreciate that. In the meantime, I want to provide you an update on two topics that were recently brought to your attention. HCFC 23, or Freon, which is emitted by Chemours in Rubbertown and contributes to climate change, and PFAS and PFOS, a class of substances commonly referred to as forever chemicals. With respect to the first, just after our last board meeting, US EPA proposed a new rule, phased down of hydrofluorocarbons, which include HCFC 23. This is required as part of the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act that Congress passed in December of 2020. Per EPA, hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, are potent greenhouse gases that were intentionally developed as replacements for ozone-depleting substances. They're used widely in refrigeration, air conditioning, aerosols, fire suppression, and foam blowing applications. With the phase out of the ozone-depleting substances to protect stratospheric ozone, that's the good ozone up high, and the increasing use of refrigeration and air conditioning globally, use of HFCs has been increasing. So at this point, EPA is proposing to phase down listed HFCs to 15% of their baseline levels by 2036. To achieve this, EPA is proposing, among other things, to establish an allowance trading system and set aside a certain amount of allowances for 6 specific applications listed in the AIM Act. And these include propellants that are used in metered dose inhalers, defense sprays, structural polyurethane foam used in marine and trailer applications, etching and cleaning of semiconductors and related equipment, fire suppression systems in military vehicles and ships, and also aerospace applications. Importantly, the proposed rule also provides that no later than October 1st of 2022, no more than 0.1% of HFC 23 created at a facility may be emitted. Thus, the proposed rule essentially codifies and makes enforceable Chemours' commitment to reduce its emissions of HFC 23 by 99.9% by the end of 2022. It is our understanding that the proposed rule will be published in the Federal Register later today, and EPA will accept comments during the public comment period for 45 days. There's also a planned public hearing, I think 15 days after publication. For reviewing the proposed rule, I hope you can see this. It is rather large. This is the pre-publication version of it, so it's a little bit easier on older eyes. It's written in 1.5 lines instead of in the Federal Register where it'll be in about 6-point font type. So we are continuing to review this. It sets an aggressive implementation schedule with allocations expected by October of this year. It does make enforceable Chemours' commitment to reduce its emissions of HFC 23 by 99.9% by October of 2022. As we review the rule, APCD will determine whether we need to provide comments based on our particular situation, having a facility located here in Louisville. Some of our National Clean Air Act agency partners, including the National Association of Clean Air Act Agencies, or NACA, are also reviewing the rule and may make comments on behalf of member agencies. We hope that others, including our fellow Louisvillians, will share their concerns with EPA as well. And to help with that, we'll provide a link to EPA's proposed rule page on our page so that it's easy for people to find that rule, review it, and hopefully make comments with US EPA. We can, if the board would like, provide a more detailed update on the proposed rule at next month's board meeting after we've had a chance to do a little bit more review. With respect to the second, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS and PFOAs, are a group of man-made chemicals that include PFOA and PFOS, PFOA and PFOS, and a large number of other chemical compounds. I've seen a few estimates that there may be as many as 5,000 chemicals within this class of compounds. Since their development in the 1940s, PFAS have been used to make carpets, clothing, stain and water repellent fabrics for furnitures, paper packaging for food, non-stick products, including Teflon, polishes, waxes, paints, and other materials. They are also used for firefighting at airfields and in industrial processes. Certain PFAS chemicals are no longer manufactured in the United States, but some can still be imported. Most recently, concerns have come to light where these chemicals have contaminated drinking water supplies. PFOA and PFOS have been the most extensively produced and thus studied of these chemicals. Both are very persistent in the environment, and they are also in the human body because they don't break down and can accumulate over time. There is evidence that exposure to PFOS may impact human health. Due to the vast number of chemicals within this class of substances, their past widespread use, and current but more limited use in commerce still, this is a problem that, like climate change, demand a national solution. EPA recognizes this and has recently taken the following actions. In 2019, they developed an action plan to identify short and long-term management strategies. In 2020, they developed additional monitoring tests and test methodologies to detect chemicals in this class of compounds. It published interim guidance and strategies for managing and disposing of certain PFAS compounds, established new import requirements, and issued a preliminary determination to regulate additional compounds. So in 2021, they have listed 120 PFAS compounds to the list of substances to be reported under Section 313 of the Emergency Planning Community Right to Know Act, or EPCRA, each year to the Toxics Release Inventory, or TRI. And this is a very important step. It supports informed decision-making by communities, government agencies, and companies. In April, EPA issued its toxicity assessment for perfluorobutane sulfonic acid, another perfluoroalkylated compound, and since our last board meeting, established a new EPA Council on PFAS to build on the agency's ongoing work to better understand and ultimately reduce the potential risks caused by these chemicals. So what does that mean for Louisville? PFAS and PFOA are not emitted here. The Louisville Water Company monitors for PFAS pursuant to an EPA PFAS monitoring rule, and as noted on its website, has stated that even though they have detected very low concentration in parts per trillion, they do not at this time see PFAS as a concern for Louisville's drinking water based on the best available science at that national level. If you have questions about Louisville Water Company and PFAS, please see their website, louisvillewater.com. For the district at this point, we'll review the TRI reporting that is available in 2022. So companies are required this year to track their emissions of those 120 PFAS chemicals and report those to TRI in March of next year. For those newly listed chemicals, we will work with EPA as it conducts its ongoing work, including ongoing toxicity and health assessments, developing new monitoring and detection methods, and issuing regulatory proposals to manage this class of substances going forward. I do want to note that this EPA is very active. In addition to the hydrofluorocarbons rule, we can expect to see, I think, a lot more regulatory development in the near future on greenhouse gases and issues of new and emerging contaminants, including PFAS and PFOAs. EPA has taken an all of EPA approach to this, and they are reviewing it not just from an air standpoint, but from a water and waste standpoint as well. On May 6th, Mayor Fisher signed Executive Order number 2021-005, prioritization of purchases that advance Louisville Metro government's environmental sustainability efforts, to prioritize our purchase of electric and hybrid vehicles, and also to require major contractors and suppliers to provide carbon reduction plans as part of their awards. The order is intended to help Louisville Metro government convert to renewable electricity by 2030 and to clean energy by 2035, and it reduces greenhouse gas emissions. Importantly for APCD, it also reduces emissions of those criteria pollutants, particulate matter, volatile organic compounds, and nitrogen oxides that are the ozone precursors for ozone formation. Michelle King, the district's executive administrator and director of program planning, provided comments on behalf of Drive Clean Louisville, a cross-functional team planning for and exploring opportunities related to electric vehicle and clean fuel transportation for Louisville Metro government and the community. The Drive Clean team developed projects for grant funding and policy development with a focus on reducing tailpipe emissions from light and heavy duty mobile sources throughout Louisville, Jefferson County. While we don't have regulatory authority to seek further reductions from mobile sources. Efforts such as Michelle's in her leadership with the Dry Clean team promote voluntary reductions that are impactful and drive down pollution here in Louisville. So I want to thank Michelle for her leadership with Dry Clean Louisville, and also the board for its investment in electric vehicle infrastructure at Healthy House and Jefferson Memorial Forest. On May 13th, Byron, Michelle, and I presented at the Rubbertown Community Advisory Council meeting on the air quality action partners that you'll hear about here in a few moments from Mr. Gary and Oders. And last night we had the pleasure of joining Chairman Hilton at the West Jefferson County Community Task Force, where he presented about the board's role and the role its members have in improving Louisville's air quality. Finally, the district has revised the air toxics report in response to comments we've heard from the public and board members to better identify averaging periods for the data and those used in the STAR program, and to include a rolling average. We've tweaked the report, but we'd like to finalize it for the time being. So we'll be asking for some final thoughts on the format here in the near future. With that, if the board does not have any questions, Mr. Gary will provide a presentation on the district's Air Quality Action Partner Program. Mr. Hilton? You're on mute, Carl.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Hampton, were you aware that there was an article in the paper recently that said a single chemical plant in Louisville emits a super pollutant that does more damage than every car in the city?
So,
You see
Mr.
that
Hilton, that article is related to the pollution of HFC 23, the hydrofluorocarbon from Chemours. So I think I'm quoted in those articles. There's a series of 3 of them, and the district's approach to that is that controlling greenhouse gases is something that deserves a national strategy. US EPA has heard that, and they are now proposing a national strategy to control those emissions by 99.9%.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to see more climate change and greenhouse gas action and legislation from the new administration in the White House that we've seen in previous years. So it'd be great if you could just give the board an update maybe once a quarter of what's going on around climate change and greenhouse gases.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Gary?
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Dr. May. Just in terms of moving forward and when they're developing some ways of monitoring the water system for those chemicals, how, I guess, who or how are we doing that? Is that going to be MSD? Is that going to be us? You know, what locations would be targeted? You know, I know we're going to do it as a concept, but what are some specific?
So that's a really great question, Dr. May. And it actually, as I mentioned, it's a whole of EPA approach. So there are already rules in place from US EPA's drinking water program, so that the Louisville Water Company is required to monitor for PFAS and PFOAs in accordance with that protocol pursuant to their authority under the Clean Water Act. There is also rulemaking under the non-point discharge emission system, NPDES, which is the wastewater discharge rules that MSD is subject to. There will also likely be rules and monitoring protocols for evaluating PFAS and PFOA in soils. There are also probably going to be some monitoring rules for things like landfills. These chemicals have been used in so many different applications, including the pizza box to keep the grease from soaking through, and food wrappers, that they're rather ubiquitous in our environment. So, you know, across all media, air, water, and waste, including drinking water and wastewater, EPA is going to be looking for methodologies to be able to detect these chemicals appropriately and developing strategies to manage those long term.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? If not, thanks, Ms. Hunt, for the director's report. Mr. Gary?
Thank you, Chairman Helton. Going to share my screen for a quick presentation here. The board will recall that last month, myself as well as Michelle King and Dee and Bradley gave an update on program planning for the upcoming ozone season. The portion that I covered was a new program that we're calling the Air Quality Action Partners Program. And I'm just going to give a quick update on that. This is a voluntary program. If you'll recall, I'm going to slide through these first couple slides pretty quickly because they're from last month's. But this was a program that we created in response to the recommendations of the multi-pollutant stakeholder group that we create a program to recognize companies and encourage them to take voluntary measures beyond the regulatory requirements to reduce precursors of ozone as well as other pollutants such as fine particulate matter and air toxics. So these first couple slides that I just showed were the recommendations pertinent to this. This is also a slide from last month, but updated. On the left is the letter that was sent to all of our permitted sources, from registered sources all the way up to our Title V sources, sent out at the end of March to 703 contacts at 400 different plants. At this point, we have received 28 different facilities signed up to the program. The link at the bottom there is to a new webpage on APCD's page. You can find it from the homepage under Permits and Compliance on the left-hand side. And much of the material I am covering here is already available on that webpage, which just went live this morning. Thank you very much to Sherry Steiner, our administrative assistant, for all her hard work over the past week on getting that webpage together for us. In total, you'll recall we had a number of different levels of the ACAPS program. We ended up having 5 companies sign up at the base level Air Quality Action Partner level, 10 companies sign up for the silver level commitments, 9 for gold, and 4 for platinum. And these were from everywhere from registered sources all the way up to Title V sources. We even had one source that isn't covered by our regulations that's actually exempt sign up. So this has been all the way across, but most of them were Title V companies, or I guess not most, the plurality, sorry, were Title V companies. Those 13 Title V companies represent a little more than a third of our total Title V companies that signed up at one level or another to take voluntary actions to help reduce pollution. This is a map of the locations of those sources. Not surprisingly, you see large clusters where we have large clusters of facilities in and around Rubbertown and along the West End, as well as a couple of our industrial parks. This map is also available on that webpage. Just to reiterate what the commitments were related to, those who signed up as Air Quality Action Partners, everyone was required to take the 2 Tier 1 commitments. Those were to sign up for air quality alerts and to be sure that they were distributed to all employees, as well as 2 additional voluntary measures. Those at the silver level were those who signed up for those first requirements, as well as at least one requirement from each of the Tier 2 categories: the stationary source equipment and operations reductions, vehicle and fleet emissions, and facility and building related emissions. So from a variety of sectors at their facilities and locations are finding ways to take voluntary measures. So those air quality action partners that I mentioned, we had 5 total. The first one to sign up actually came in the same day I sent that letter out. Reading Equipment and Distribution signed up the very same day to become our very first air quality action partner. And there's a list of the remaining. They are also up on our webpage. And here's a list of those silver level air quality action partners. The Marathon Petroleum Company Cane Run Station is that facility that is actually exempt from our regulations. And I also wanted to recognize Kelvin Cooperage here. They signed up for the silver level commitments because they may not be able to quantify the effects, but they also signed up for one of our tier 3 commitments to replace at least 5% of their vehicle fleet with low emissions vehicles. So that was a step above and beyond what was required to even become a silver level partner. The gold level air quality action partners are those who did everything required for a silver level, as well as a pledge to quantify the emissions reductions under tier 3. So due by next April, before the ozone season begins next year, around the same time that our emissions statements are due from companies, they will quantify the effects of their voluntary commitments. And then finally, our platinum level partners are those who did all of the above, plus at least a 5% reduction, committed to at least a 5% reduction in either nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, or fine particulate matter. And some of them could skip over specifying how exactly they would get those reductions and just say, we'll take a 10% reduction of one of those, as well as signing up for the air quality alerts. And that was enough to be recognized as a platinum partner as well. I'm going to go through these companies one at a time just to give them individual recognition before the board. We will bring back at the end of this year, next year, once they report out as required, those reports to the board to give them additional recognition for the actual accomplishments this year. So these are the commitments made. I'm not going to read all of the commitments from each of these companies. I did want to recognize them each individually, though. Arkema, a division of Altuglass, was our actually second facility to sign up. They signed up the next day after I sent out that letter. They are a federally enforceable district origin operating permit source subject to STAR out in the Rubbertown area. And these are the commitments they took. This long list that might be a little hard to read were the commitments from Adchemics 10 Inc. They are another FEDUP source exempt from the STAR program. BASF Corporation is a minor source, and they committed to gold level commitments. Carbide Industries, LLC, Title V company, also in the Rubbertown area, that manufactures calcium carbide from an arc furnace, that committed to gold level. The Eaton Corporation is a registered source. That's our lowest level of permitting under our regulations, and they committed to gold level. So those gold level commitments came from the full spectrum of sources, from registered up to Title V. GE Appliances, I think everybody is probably familiar with what they do, but they are one of our Title V sources that committed to more than was even required to become a gold level source. Lubrizol Advanced Materials, another Title V in the Rubbertown area that manufactures synthetic resins, also committed to the gold level, including a couple of ideas that they committed to under, we had sort of an other category where they were able to come up with things specifically applicable to their plant alone. So they're going to reduce their steam usage by recycling some of that to reheat their re-slurry water. And they also are committing to switching their generator use to overnight rather than during the hottest period of the day when it contributes the most to ozone formation. Kimura's company is another Title V that Ms. Hamilton was just speaking about in her director's report. In addition to those commitments that they're making to reduce HFCs, they signed up under the program as a gold level partner. And Xeon Chemicals, another Title V in the Rubbertown area that signed up. Moving on to our platinum level partners, American Synthetic Rubber Company, ASRC, signed up as a platinum level. They had a few unique other programs, such as using bicycles and battery operated forklifts on site to get around rather than using gas powered vehicles. They also were able to commit to that 10% reduction in fine particulate matter as well as NOx. This is due to a program they are replacing their coal boilers with new natural gas boilers. And that's already been permitted through a construction permit and is great news for Louisville as a whole. Eckert America, our second platinum level partner, is another Title V out in the same area that produces aluminum powder and paste. They committed to platinum level, including 10% reduction in PM 2.5 through installation and startup of a new voluntary atomization department filtration systems. Might be mispronouncing some of these. Hexion Inc., another Title V company in the same area that produces formaldehyde and phenolic resins, signed up as a platinum level. They are committing to install diesel retrofits on at least 5% of local fleets in the next year. That is one of the other ways to become a platinum partner, aside from a 5% reduction in NOx, VOCs, or PM 2.5, was to commit to at least a 5% switchover of your fleet or installation of diesel retrofits, as well as quantifying the effects of those commitments over the next year. And finally, LG&E Mill Creek Generating Station, due to their voluntary commitments under that enforceable board agreement that was just voted on earlier today, will be able to commit to at least a 5% reduction in NOx. I believe last year we saw much greater than 5% reduction in NOx over the previous years. They are also committing to electrifying 10% of their total fleets by 2030. So just a little bit of an update on next steps. As I mentioned earlier, we will be presenting to the board again next year on the actual results of those gold and platinum level commitments. We plan to make this an annual program as well. Folks will have to sign up each year to stay a part of the program if they wish to. So that invitation to join is also ongoing. We received signups right up until this morning, actually. And we encourage people. We might not every month give an update on new signups, but we will continue to update that webpage and recognize any source at any time that takes those voluntary steps. We've also had some internal conversations on how we might be able to broaden this program even more. We are not sure exactly where we're heading next. We definitely plan on keeping this an ongoing program, but if we can broaden it to find even more ways to improve air quality in Louisville, that would be fantastic. That's the end of my presentation. I'm glad to take any questions from the board or with the board's permission from the public.
Well, very excellent report, Mr. Gary. And it looks like most of the companies have made a commitment to defer cutting grass and groundkeeping activities on ozone action days. So that should help a lot, really.
That was one of the most common things that folks could sign up for. And it seems like such an easy step to take, but it can definitely make a difference.
Yeah, it does, really. That's great. I'm very pleased with it. Are there any questions or comments from any board members regarding Mr. Gary's report, presentation? If not, thank you. We look forward to hearing more good news, the outcome at maybe the end of the year, so forth. And are you planning on trying to honor these gold and platinum companies at the end of the year or next year or something?
They are required to submit reports by April 15th of next year on
Right.
how successful their commitments actually were. We will definitely bring those to the board. We've talked about possibly requesting the board vote to sort of recognize them in a more formal manner or something like that.
Okay.
We're not exactly sure what that'll look like yet, but we definitely will bring those reports back to the board next year.
It looks very good. Thank you very much for excellent report. Are any other questions or comments from board members? If not, let's move on to our quality data. Most of you have received the reports electronically. I just, when does the ozone action month start? Because the 8-hour ozone exceedances through May, so we haven't had any exceedances for ozone year to date, right?
We haven't. There's actually sort of two questions there too. So I mentioned air quality alert days and reporting May through September. There are a couple different ozone seasons and it gets confusing. The ozone season for facilities reporting requirements is May through September, but we have to monitor for ozone for a broader season from March through October. So this will be at least the second report, I believe, but we haven't had any exceedances yet.
Okay, very good. Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board members regarding the air quality data report? Enforcement status report. Any questions or comments regarding the enforcement status report? It looked good to me. Excess emission report. Any questions or comments from board members on that particular report? Also, the complaint and investigation status summary. Any questions or comments from board members regarding that report? Well, I think we have completed our agenda. I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance, and I also like to thank all the board members for your attendance also. I will now adjourn this regular meeting of the board, and thank you all for your participation, and stay safe. The next board meeting is Wednesday, June 16th, 10 a.m. And hopefully we have in-person meeting in July, hopefully. So thanks everyone and have a safe day.